Hashem. Today's daf is Masechta Baba Basra, daf Kuf Lamed Ches, and we'll begin from Kuf Lamed Zayin Amid Beis, about 4 lines from the bottom. Okay, 4 lines from the bottom. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Okay, begin. Uh, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, HaKoisev Nechosav La'achar. Somebody wrote on a piece of document, a piece of paper, that he's giving all his possessions to somebody else. Now, the Amma Hala, but the other person said, the recipient said, Efshi behen, I don't want them. Maybe he doesn't want the responsibility of all this money. So, too late, Kana, he acquires the possessions, even against his will. Va'afilu oimed v'tzoveach, even if he's standing there and screaming, I don't want it, I don't want it, it automatically becomes his. So that if in case this person, the recipient, has a creditor, so that creditor could come collect because he has new wealth, newfound wealth. Even if he screams, I don't want it. Rabbi Yochanan says, loikana. Rabbi Yochanan says he didn't acquire it because he's screaming, he doesn't want it. So we need, this machloikis needs an explanation. Amar Rabbi Abba Bar Mamel said, v'loi pligi, they're not arguing. We go to the top of Kuf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph. Kan b'tzoveach mi'ikara. Before receiving the shtar, the one that says he did not acquire it, is he screaming that he doesn't want it. So therefore, or even if he gets the shtar in his hand, the document that says he got this all his possessions, you can't force him to acquire it. And he's claiming that it is a detriment because he doesn't want any gifts. Right? The Rashbam says, whoever hates gifts will live. So that's a pasuk in Mishlei. So he doesn't want it. So then he doesn't, we don't give it to him. But the Rashbam adds a very important point. So what happens to the possessions? Rashbam says it does not go back to the original owner, okay? Because he gifted them, so he removed his ownership on that item. The recipient didn't want to receive it. So now it becomes, Rashbam says, hefker. It belongs to anybody who wants to take it, gets control of those assets. So that's the case of the one that holds that he doesn't acquire it, is because the guy, as soon as you put the document in his hand, he was screaming, I don't want it, I don't want it. Khan, the one that says he acquired it, first he was silent. He was silent. He received the document that says, oh, how nice. I own these documents, this wealth. And then he screams he doesn't want it. So once he already accepted the shtar, so he agreed to acquire the gift, acquire the transfer. And therefore, once he acquired it, it doesn't help by saying you don't want it, because until you give it to somebody else, it's still yours. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Nachman bar Yitzchak said, what happens? Zika loy al yedei acher. Let's say Reuven wants to give all his possessions to Shimon, right? But instead of giving it directly to Shimon, he wrote on a document that he's giving it to Shimon, but the one that he gave the document was to Levi. He said, Levi, you acquire the document on behalf of Shimon. So what happens? So Shimon sees as Reuven gives a document that says he's giving all his possessions to Shimon, but he doesn't hand it to Shimon, he gives it to Levi. And Shimon was quiet. And then he says, oh my goodness, Levi now acquired all these possessions on my behalf. I'm rich. Vishasak, he was quiet. Then he screams he doesn't want it. So what does he acquire it or not? Banu lachmachloikis Reb Shimon ben Gamliel v'Rabbanim. This is the machlokes between Reb Shimon ben Gamliel and Rabbanim. What is the machlokes? The Tanya we learned in a brisa. Again, we're dealing with a guy who's healthy. Hakoisev nechosov la'achem. Someone who writes that all his possessions should go to somebody else. He koisev nechosov la'achem. He writes that all his possessions should go to somebody else. V'hoya behen avodim. Amongst all his wealth, was slaves. So he's gifting it to somebody else. Va'amahala, but the other person, the recipient, said, what does that mean? I'm going to have to feed all these slaves? I don't need it. I don't want it. I don't want the responsibility of feeding slaves. Even though you don't have to feed a slave, but you can make him figure out how he's going to get his own food. But nobody wants to be responsible for somebody else or to watch them struggle to find food. You don't want ownership. Imhoya, too late. Once you receive the document, so then Imhoya Rabban Sheni Kohen, if the recipient was a Kohen, and a Kohen who owns slaves, his slaves have a right to eat truma. So Harei Elu Oichlin Betruma, these slaves can now eat truma because the recipient is the ownership of the slave, even though he said, I don't want them. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel says, Kevan she'oma hala as soon as the second person says, I don't want them, it's too late. Then it's not too late. The Yarshim of the first guy means the gifter really owns the slaves. And if the gifter died, then it belongs to his Yarshim. In other words, this recipient does not receive the slave. Says the Gemara, the Tanakh, Rab Shimon ben Gamliel makes sense. But we asked the question on this brisa. The Tanakama will force the recipient to receive these slaves as the gift. Even if he's screaming he doesn't want it, how could it be? If you scream that you don't want something, we don't give it to you against your will. So Rava explained the brisa. Some say Rabbi Yochanan explained the brisa. If he's screaming from the very get-go, so then the kuli alma loy pligi the loykani. If he's screaming as he's getting the star that says you own this, he's screaming he doesn't want it. Certainly nobody would argue that he's not acquiring it. Shosak, let's say he received a piece of paper, he was quiet, and then he started saying, "Hey, wait, what's going on over here? I'm having second thoughts." So too late. The kuli amaloi pligi dekani. Everybody would agree. Rabbi Shimon and Gamliel or Rabbanan would agree that you acquired it. Even Rabbi Shimon and Gamliel would agree you acquired it because you were quiet for the first moment that you received the document that you own the slaves. Ki pligi. When is the argument? Shezikaloi ayadei acha, that Reuven gave a document that he's giving his possessions and the slaves to Shimon, but he didn't give the document directly to Shimon. He gave it to Levi, a third party, so he should be the one doing the acquisition on behalf of Shimon. So he transferred it via a third party. V'shasek, and Shimon was watching as Levi is acquiring the document on his behalf, and he was quiet. Then he started to complain, hey, I don't want this. The Tanakama holds midish shasak, since he was silent, kaninhi. So then he acquired it because you saw Levi holding a document, acquiring something on your behalf. It's too late. You acquired those slaves. Why are you screaming now? Why are you screaming now that you don't want it? You were originally silent. You started thinking it over and saying, I don't want to own slaves. I don't want it. Rab Shimon Gamliel holds, the fact that you were screaming, that proves that your silence wasn't a real silence of acquiescence. You actually you had this in you the whole time that you don't want to acquire slaves. So then why didn't you say something right away? Why didn't you scream right away when you saw Levi receiving the document on your behalf? So Shimon held the savak. Why should I scream right now? What's it going to help? I didn't get the document. Levi got the document because he didn't put two and two together that Levi could acquire something on his behalf. So probably he mistook that he's thinking that he doesn't own anything just because Levi acquired the document. But maybe somebody explained it to him that no, Levi acquired on your behalf. Oh, and then you scream. So then that proves that you always didn't really want to acquire these slaves. And Shimon Gamliel holds that in case that's the situation, so that proves that from the very get-go you don't want to acquire it, and therefore it's not yours, not your slaves. It goes back to the original gifter. Tana Rabbana, New Gemara, Shchiv Mara, somebody who's on his deathbed. Now, it's very important to know that when somebody's on his deathbed, you don't need a shtar. The fact that he verbally says something, it really belongs to that something. Because the Rabbanan said that a Shchiv Mara, guy on his deathbed, as soon as he says something, the acquisition happens. Sha'amar, he said, but on his deathbed, Tnu Masayim Zuz Leplani, give 200 Zuz to this person. Ushloish Meyes Leplani, and give 300 to this person. Rabba Meyes Leplani, and give 400 to this person. Showed he loved the third person more. He didn't give him more money. But anyway, he gave them all. So now there was he owed money. He owed money prior to him gifting all this money to somebody, to three people. So normally that when somebody is a Bal Chayv, he's a creditor, he goes after the last person that received his money, because that last person, and then you go to the one before, and then you go to the one before. But here, he just listed how he's distributing his assets. So it was considered as he was gifting them all at the same time. So you can't say it all out in one breath. You had to, put it in order. So ein oimrim, we don't say kol hakoidim b'shtar zoicha. Whoever got his money first, he gets to keep it. So no, we don't say that. Therefore, yotza olav shtar chayv. If a creditor comes to collect before they receive their money, goyim mekulim, he can take from any of their monies, because they don't really see the creditor has first rights. So he can collect from the guy that received 200 zuz, even though he was the first one that the Shchiv Mara said he should get 200 zuz. He can come and collect from him because it was gifted all at the same time. So he's a creditor on all their monies. Avo Omar, but if the man said on his deathbed, Shnu Masayim Zuz Leplani, first give 200 zuz to this person, Va'acharav, and then afterwards Leplani, and then again you to somebody else, and give 300 zuz to somebody else, Va'acharav Leplani, and then give 400 zuz to the third guy. So he said acharav. So first give it to this one. Then when there's money left over, give it to that one. And then there's money left over, you give it to this one. And let's say he had a creditor that he owed, 300 zuz, 200 zuz, or whatever. So kol hakoidim b'shtar zoicha. Whoever got his star first, his money is by him. And therefore the creditor will only go after the last person. Because as soon as there's always money left over, you don't go after the recipients of gift if there was money left over by the original borrower. So therefore, if a creditor comes and wants to collect his loan, goiva, he will collect mina acharai, from the last person. And if there's not enough for the last person, if the loan was more than what the last person has, goiva mishlofanov, then he goes to the one prior to that, the one that was gifted prior to the last person. And if there's none for that person, then you go to the person prior to that. But if there is enough by the last person, then you can't go collecting from the guy who received Messiah Zuz, because he got his Messiah Zuz and there was still money left over by the borrower. And then he gave the second gift to the second guy and the third gift to the third guy. So therefore the creditor will always go to the last person in this case, because he said, Acharov, after giving it to the first guy, you give it to the second guy, and then you give it to the third guy. But in the first case, he just said he was just giving instructions. So it's basically they're receiving it all at one time. So therefore, the creditor can even go after the one that got Messiah Zuz, even though it seems that he was the first guy to receive the Shtar Choiv, he was the first guy to receive the gift, but still, they were all gifted at the same time. Tana Rabbanim. Shchivimra, a guy on his deathbed. Again, as soon as he says something, it's effective. Sha'amar, he said, Tnu Masayim Zuz L'Plani B'ni B'char Karoiloi. I want you to give 200 zuz to my oldest son. He deserves it. So that doesn't mean that the B'char has given up his Pishnayim. So Neutlen, he can take 200 zuz, the Neuteles B'char Rasayin, and he also takes his Pishnayim, because that's just an extra gift that the father gave to the B'char. Maybe he was taking care of him while he was sick. But if the guy on his deathbed said, I'm giving him to take the place of his Pishnayim, right, of his inheritance, so Yodei al Elyonin. Then the Bechor could decide what he wants. Rotza Noitlin, he can take 200 zuz, or Rotza Noitel B'chai Rasai, he can take the Pishnayim, whichever is greater, he's going to take. But he can't take both, because the Shchimara said that this is for being the Bechor. And therefore, it's like as if he's saying, okay, maybe you take Pishnayim, maybe if you want, take the 200 zuz. I'm not sure. Maybe the Shchimara didn't know his value of his estate. But he's not giving him an extra gift. Again, same idea by this case. Second case. Ishti, I want you to give 200 zuz to my wife. Karayla, she deserves it. So now you're saying she deserves it. Noitlsam, she could take the 200 zuz. V'noitelis ksubasa, she could also take her ksuba. Most ksubas are 200 zuz also, so she gets the total of 400 zuz. But if he said this is her ksuba, so then we go to Amud Beis, Kuf Lamed Chesam Beis, Yodea El Yoina. She can decide what she wants. Rotza Noitaltan. If she wants, she can take the 200 zuz. Rotza Noitelis is ksubasa, but also she can take her ksuba, whichever is more valuable. Whichever is more valuable, because it's obviously he told her that these 200 zuz is for your ksuba. Same idea. Shchimara, a guy who's on his deathbed. The Amma who said, he says, I want you to give 200 zuz to my creditor because he deserves it. Now, he's not giving him Noitlin, he takes that 200 zuz, and he can still collect on his loan. He's not giving, so it's the Shchimara, the guy on his deathbed, is probably giving his creditor because he's a friend, not because he wants to do it because he wants to give him ribbis, but he's giving him an extra 200 zuz. But he didn't say, he just said, he deserves it. But if he said, I'm giving it to my creditor because I owe him the money, he takes it for the loan. That's how it stands. Now, Gemara asks a question by Baal Choiv. Mishum da'amal k'ro'iloi, who tells a Baal Choiv, because he said he deserves it, that's why noitlim v'noitlas choivoi, he can take that plus he can get paid for the loan. Why would somebody give the person that he loaned money extra money? So the Gemara probably didn't understand. Maybe he wanted to give him an extra gift. But still, it's odd that you would give, if you want to give an extra gift to your Bechor, to your wife, that's understandable. But if you're giving an extra gift of 200 zuz to the one that you borrowed money from, why? At Vidilma, maybe when he said he deserves it is because I borrowed money from him. That's what he meant. But he didn't mean that you double pay him or you give him extra above and beyond the actual loan. So how do you interpret that? Answers the Gemara, Rav Nachman Omali Huna. Rav Nachman said that Huna told me how money that this brisa is Rabbi Akiva. Is aligned with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. The Dayak Lishnona Yesera. Rabbi Akiva says that if you add extra words, we start examining it. Why? And since his word kira'iloi, that my creditor deserves it, by saying those extra words, you probably want to give him extra money more and above the loan. The Tanah we learned in Mishnah that Rab Kiva says, if you sell a field, the water cisterns that are in the field are not included in the sale. Even though you wrote the height of the field, whatever bumps on the field, and whatever is deep in the field, but not the water cisterns. Well, water pit that's in the field are not part of the sale of a field. Not only that, the seller has to rebuy a pathway to get to his water pit, to the water cistern, to the water pit, from the person he sold the field from, because it was included in the sale. And what Rabbi Kiva holds, when a person sells, he sells with a generous eye, and therefore, if he wants to access to his water pit, he has to buy an easement. You don't have to buy an easement, because that's when he sold the pit, he didn't sell also a pathway to get to the pit, so that wasn't included in his head. He sold the field, but he didn't sell the water cisterns and the pathway, because the Chachamim hold that a person sells, he sells it in a more frugal manner. Not that he's going to have to now repurchase something back from the person he sold from. He sold too. Rabbi Kiva would agree. If you sell them a field, and he said, "I'm not selling the pit and the water cistern. Those are extra words. You didn't have to say that because it's understood you're not selling the water pit. So why did you say it? Rabbi Kiva says that you meant to say that. Not only that, Rabbi Kiva would agree that in that case, you don't have to rebuy an easement to get to the pit. What you meant to say by those extra words is besides the water cisterns, the pathway to get to the water cistern and the water pit is not included in the sale. In that case, Rabbi Kiva Moima. Almost, so we see from this brisa, once you add extra words, we can make inferences to that includes something that was not part of the sale. Since you didn't need to say it, and you said it anyway, you're adding additional things to the sale. Since he didn't have to say that to his creditor, he is giving an extra 200 zuz, he deserves it. So why did he say that? That you meant to say to your creditor that not only am I giving you the loan back, but I'm giving you an extra 200 zuz. Again, not for ribas, probably. He probably is trying to say that he's a friend and I want to give him something extra. But maybe he did something for me. Okay, so Tan Rabban, new Gemara. Shchiv Mara she'ama mani yeshli eitzel pliny. Shchiv Mara says that somebody on his deathbed, instead of saying gifting money, he's basically saying some people owe me money. Now, Ha'edim, and that's when he died. So Eidim Koisvin, the Eidim could write down a star that so and so owes him money. Afal Pishain Makim, even if the Eidim weren't sure that the loan actually occurred. Lefichach, so the Eidim wrote down that your father said that so and so owes him money. But still, when the Yesoimim want to collect on that loan, when they want to collect, they have to prove that the loan actually occurred because the Eidim don't know nothing. Their Eidim are in the hospital room where the guy says, that so-and-so owes me money. So they wrote it down that this person in the hospital room, before he died, said so-and-so owes him money. But the kids, if they want to collect with that document, they have to prove that the loan actually happened. Divrei Rav Meir. The Chachamim says, Ein Kaisrim, the Eidim should not write it down, Elim Kei Makirim, only if they know for sure that this loan actually happened. Because what could happen is if they write it down and maybe the Yisraelim will bring it to Bezdin, Bezdin will say, "Oh, you have a document, you should collect." Lefichach, but if they do have a document, if the Yisraelim do have a document, shu gaiva ein tzarich lahavi raya. They don't have to prove that it happened because if the Eidim wrote it down, according to the Chaman, it must be that the Eidim really know that the loan actually happened. So Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Lihuna. Tana, Rav Nachman said, Huna told me, Tana, that the Brisa has the reversed opinion. Rav Meir Oimer in Kaisvim, the Chachamim Oimer Kaisvim. Chachamim say you do write around, they could write it down. There's nothing wrong with writing down. Having a document that somebody owes you money doesn't mean you're going to collect with the document. The opposite version of what we had before. Va'af Rav Meir, even Rav Meir, who said, Lo Yoma Ella B'Shum Bezdin Toim. Rav Meir said not to write it down because it may lead to a bezdin making a mistake. Because if you have a document that says if the some have a document that says so and so owes them money, it could be that it was written that so and so owes the money, but doesn't mean that it actually happened. And maybe if they bring it to Bezdin is going to collect with that document. That's why Rav Meir says, "Ein kaisvin, don't write such a document down," because it could lead to a collection that we're not sure that a collection should be warranted. Amar Rav Dimi min Ardor, Rav Dimi from the door says, Hilkasa, therefore, you do write it down. The people in the hospital room could write it down. We're not concerned about that if the Yisraelim are going to bring it to Bezdin, well, the Bezdin are going to collect with this document. Bezdin are going to actually investigate further. They're not going to make somebody pay unless they for sure know that the document is ratified and true. Says the Gemara, why is this different than Rava? The Amar Rava said, we are concerned Bezdin makes a mistake. Ein cholsin, we don't allow a person to make chalitza. and give a woman a chalitza document that she received a chalitza, Ellen came akirin, unless they know for sure that this is her brother-in-law that's doing the chalitza. The Eima Ma'anim, we don't allow a woman to get miyun, Ellen came akirin, unless we know that this was this was his wife, and this is the husband of the girl. So, lefichach, therefore, if we know the only time Bezdin will write something is kaisvin get chalitza to get miyun, ba'afal pisha ein makirim. Therefore, you could write a get chalitza and get miyun, even though you don't know them, because Bezdin is not going to. You shouldn't. If they're going to write something down, it must be they verified everything. Because if Bezdin started saying, "Oh, this woman had a chalitza, this woman had a miyun," maybe this woman is going to take the chalitza document to another Bezdin and says, "I'm free from chalitza, and let me get married." But they're not going to realize that the previous Bezdin didn't investigate whether the chalitza was actually done by her brother-in-law or by somebody on the street. So you are concerned about maybe the next Bezdin is going to make a mistake. So how could you say that we're never concerned about Bezdin making a mistake? Bezdin sometimes do make mistakes. Answers the Gemara, loy. Bezdin, Basra Bezdina, loy daike. If Bezdin has a document from another Bezdin, they're not going to check into it. They're going to assume that the previous Bezdin did the work, and therefore they're going to, based on the previous Bezdin's psak, they're going to allow things to happen. Therefore, Bezdin, before they issue a document, have to be 100% sure about the events that they're saying is true. But Bezdin, Basra, Eidim, Daiki. A Bezdin will always investigate, even if Eidim say something is true. So if Eidim said in the hospital room that so-and-so owes this person money, and they wrote a document, when the Yisayimim are going to come collect on that, another Bezdin is not going to be concerned to make the collection happen, because they're going to investigate. Perhaps that the collection is not warranted over here. Maybe the guy on his hospital room, it made a mistake or wasn't telling the truth. So therefore, you could write it down. It's not going to lead to any mistaken collection over here. Okay, we'll stop by the Mishnah on Daf Kuf Lamed Ches Amud Beis.
Oh, thank you.
Yeshkoyach.